is a Paxson. Go to the YouTube channel to check out all of my previous interviews. Last interview, I interviewed Cassidy Cobb from 9 and 10 U's in Cadillac, Michigan. She is a TV reporter and anchor. But today's interview, I have a freelance photographer, ultra awesome hockey photographer, in my opinion, and the newspaper advisor over at Schoolcraft College for the Schoolcraft Connection, Rena Laverty. How are you doing?
Doing well, considering, what's out there going on right now.
Right. Yeah. I definitely didn't think, when January hit, we'd be dealing with all the stuff we're dealing with. And I didn't think there'd be a global wide virus, but here we are.
Yeah, it is what it is, and we just are adapting to life.
So instead of being in your house, you're in Joe Louis Arena, it looks like.
Yes, I am. That's one of the photos I took. I use it for my virtual backgrounds from time to time. It's actually the last puck drop from the Joe on the last game back in a few years ago. So
Really?
it's pretty cool. It's one of my cherished memories that I have. I've actually blown that up on my wall in my house too, so it's pretty cool.
Was Joe Louis Arena your favorite place to work and take pictures in?
Yeah, it's I think just the historic nature of it and the close atmosphere that you are with the fans. It's got a different vibe to it. It definitely needed an upgrade, and they definitely made that upgrade. But just going there and just being around the people and in close quarters, and being live in that building was very surreal and enriching at times, especially during playoffs.
Not the people and not, the team or anything about that, but what do you think is one of the worst places you've ever had to go and take pictures?
Oof. Um, you talking about sports wise or
Yeah,
just?
sports wise.
Uh, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, every building, every place you go has its good and bad points. So, I think being in that place, you could definitely see how it aged, especially being underground there in the belly, how things were kind of falling apart in the end. So it was challenging to get around towards the end of that building, structurally, more or less. But I try to look at all the good things that came out of there and the opportunities that I had to be in that environment with a lot of amazing professionals around me and just good times overall.
Yeah, no, definitely. I assume Joe Louis Arena will be missed by a lot of fans here, just like the Palace of Auburn Hills will. But, things adapt, and now we have LCA, which it's a newer place and it's more downtown.
Yeah, for sure. I think, it's a sign of the times. Things are evolving and, we just gotta, adapt to new things and the environments are, state of the art and you get that full experience there for sure.
Talk to me about the beginning of your career, how you decided to become a photographer, how you got into hockey and shooting sports, and all the places that you've been that have gotten you to here.
Oh, that's quite a long, it's like 18 years now at this point. So, well, I went to the College for Creative Studies in Detroit. I did not major in photography at all there. I was an animation and digital media major. So my plan was to be a traditional animator for Disney. That's where I wanted to be when I first started out there. I got my bachelor's degree and decided I wasn't going to be moving to Florida anytime soon or California. So kind of put a wrench in my plan, but so I decided to adapt a little bit. And after graduating, I did an internships with the Detroit Red Wings in advertising sales. I was doing a lot of their graphic proposals for their clients and for selling ad space in the arena and in programs and all of that. I was in charge of helping the sales managers kind of showcase visually what their clients' brand would look like around the arena. So I did that in 2002 during their Stanley Cup run, which not a lot of people had the opportunity to say they did an internship during a championship run like that with all those big names that were on the roster. Just kind of for the 6 months or so that I was down there, you got to absorb a lot of the inside aspect of the game and see all the athletes and just everyday people doing their jobs, you know, day in and day out. And it's definitely a hardworking organization. And then after that, I ended up doing freelance in graphic design, just in the area, different projects. Then I got to a point where I kind of decided I wanted to go back to school and kind of fill in some gaps, you know, professionally, education-wise, that I didn't feel like I got during my 4 years. So just decided to go to Schoolcraft, take some classes, and then saw that they had an opportunity on the student newspaper to do layout and design. And so I decided to jump in and, you know, give it a try. I said, you know, why not? Give it a year, give it a semester to try that out, get some, you know, more confidence in my brand and my skill sets. And so I got that job and worked on you know, some amazing teams of students with me. And it was during that time that I actually just kind of decided to try photography, honestly. Our photo editor at the time had the first line Digital Rebel that came out. And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. You could stop action, you know, kind of, you know, do some of the things that I love to do with kind of that animation side was capturing emotion and, you know, doing that. And so I bought a camera myself and just started dabbling in it. And then it just kind of exploded while I was a student. Started networking while I was a student at Schoolcraft, started working with marketing there. And then that turned into working side by side with the Plymouth Whalers photographer. Learned a lot from him and networked with them. And that turned into another thing. And I was working with Hockey Weekly. I think this is, you know, gosh, I don't know, almost 18, not even, no, about 15 years with them now. Yeah, 15 that I've worked with them. And, you know, started with some just sports kid stuff, you know, and then worked my way up to shooting NHL games with them. And, you know, everything just kind of evolved as I went with the networking aspect and meeting people and talking to people. And, you know, found my mentor at Schoolcraft. She was there for another event and just started talking with her. And, you know, she introduced me to another aspect of the industry. And, you know, it's been amazing. And right now I currently am with the national development team in Plymouth, who took over for the Whalers where they were at, working with them and all them, the young athletes that come out of there that are potentially NHL players. Is a pretty cool opportunity. You get to see them grow. And yeah, so I mean, I've done a lot in what seems to be a very short amount of time. And, you know, been around not just sports, but editorial wise, like, you know, doing some, you know, local events here in history from, you know, automobiles to I was worked photographing the Larry Nassar trial. I did work with that. You know, it's a wide variety, and that's what I love about photography. It's not, you know, you find like your passion in it, but then you kind of branch out and try new things.
Was there any event not related to sports that was more news or something other than sports that you still can't believe you were there to photograph? That was an amazing moment that you'll never forget.
I wouldn't say it was like, I mean, there's a couple of different things, like I mentioned, the Larry Nassar trial. That was the first time I ever was in a courtroom, photographing in a courtroom, which was a very emotional time for everyone in there. You know, it just 8 hours in a courtroom listening to testimonial and being so close to the person who is on trial. He was in the box just like almost 5 feet away from us in our area that we were photographing. You know, it just mentally takes a toll on you. 8 hours of listening to these, you know, horrific events that these women went through just really drains you, you know, and you just kind of, it takes a while to get through that because you're right there with the emotion with them. And, you know, that was one of the hardest, I think, assignments I've ever had to do, is being in a situation like that.
Do you somehow have to take your emotion out of taking photos to someone who's either crying or someone who's either on trial or in a situation where you feel bad that you're there taking pictures there? Do you have to take your emotion out of it, or do you go to a place that's different from taking all your emotions out of taking the photographs?
It's a delicate balance for sure. You know, when you're in a sporting event, obviously it's different than when you're, involved in like a trial or some sort of emotional traumatic event. You just got to just work with what you have in front of you and kind of, respect the space that people are in at the time. If it's a very emotional event, you want to make sure that, you're not being too intrusive into their life, but you also have to do your job as well. So it's a very delicate balance. You just kind of, you don't want to get in people's faces. You want to kind of be more of in the background and, approach someone when you think it's appropriate. You don't want to run up to someone who's just obviously in tears. You want to make sure that you kind of build a rapport with that person as well. In a lot of situations, the more you build trust with your subject, the more that they will be able to let you do your job as well.
To this day, is there still one big moment you've covered, either sports or news, that you missed a photograph that you still think about to this day? Do you have one missed photograph that you still can't believe you missed?
I think there's a lot of missed moments, obviously, but you really can't dwell on them all. You have to kind of keep moving. There's been numerous times, obviously, in sports, a lot of it's right place, right time. Something might develop right in front of you, or it might be on the other side of the field, and it's out of your control. So getting that, you're going to be upset at first if you don't get that ultimate shot that you hope you had. We all play in our brains scenarios that we want to play out perfectly, but a lot of times that doesn't happen, especially in sports. I've had it like covering Wings games where I was on, the Wings defending side, and all of a sudden there's the game-winning goal on the other side of the ice, and it's hard. It's hard as a photographer, knowing that there's something amazing going on at the other side, and you can't really deal with it. But you have to adjust yourself. So if I can't get that game-winning shot, I'm looking at the fans beside me, the fans across. What's our goalie doing? Anything else that's surrounding me that I could do in my control to capture the moment that is happening. So I had one time where that situation happened, and I took a picture of Jimmy Howard kind of doing a jig coming out of the goal, and he was celebrating what happened to be a goal on the other side of the ice. And at first I didn't realize how that, I was like, oh man, I wanted to get that shot of that goal, that put us ahead. But then, I was taking pictures of him, and it was just like after the fact, I looked back and I said, no, this still tells a story. It's different. It's a different perspective than what was going on the other side of the ice, but it's still telling the story of what's happening in front of me. And I think that's the key part is, in today, you may not be able to capture everything, but whatever you do capture is still telling a story of what's happening in the moment. So that's kind of, there really wasn't any specifics that I could say that I kick myself on, because they happen all the time. Whatever I'm doing, there's always something that you kind of go, oh, I wish I had that, or I wish I could have done better. But in the long run, you just got to keep moving forward, and you got to keep looking, for the opportunities that are existing in front of you at the time.
Overall, in your experience, what do you think is the hardest type of photograph to ever capture and tell the story of?
I would say anything that has to do with a tragedy, raw emotion, something that's very gut wrenching, personal stories that people have. Like you can see right now in the news over the last like month or two during these difficult times in the state, even, you see a lot of the photographers, photographing the Midland area and those devastating losses those people are having with their homes. Those, to me, they're the strongest images, but they're also the hardest because you are in the space of people who are going through a tragic situation. And, that to me, those are like the hardest moments to photograph sometimes, because you can't help but feel empathy towards what's going on, but you still have to do your job as well. So for me, those are the most difficult stories sometimes to do, is just finding that balance between, like I said earlier, telling your story that you have in front of you, but also minding and respecting the people's space as well.
A few years ago, you took a picture that ended up being a pretty big deal, which involved Nicholas Cronwall.
Hmm.
And it was about a hit that was either illegal or legal, and it ended up blowing up all over the place. Kind of go through your mind as you took the picture and the aftermath of that picture and what was going through your head while people were describing, was the hit he made illegal or not on a picture you took?
Yeah, it's pretty. It happened obviously in a blink of an eye. So I was just following the play. It was kind of being set up over there, and it was just to my right of the wings bench, which would be to their left if they're sitting. And I was just following the play, just kind of lining it up and doing a couple shots just before, and then boom, like next thing I know, as I think it was Kucherov is, he's just flat on his back pretty much. Helmet flew off, and it was like, whoa, what just happened? And you continue to shoot because obviously there's more aftermath happening after the initial hit. So you kind of follow and continue it because you just don't know if there's going to be, more involved in that play itself. And then once things kind of cleared up, then I went and I scrolled back on my camera to see what I caught, and it blows you away because you're like, whoa, I actually got that. And sometimes when you shoot, and you're in the process of taking those photos, you don't necessarily know what you're experiencing until you look back at the frames that you've captured. And it was crazy to see that really kind of decisive moment happen, right there in front of me. And then I went back, later on that night, and I looked at the actual video of his hit, and you saw the replays up on the jumbotron. It just blows your mind that you know being able to capture something of that nature, the intensity, and that actually, I would say that moment was very decisive in the series itself, knowing that he wouldn't be playing that last game, in Tampa. I think that was like I said, a decisive moment for the whole series that kind of, led them to not go to the next round. I ended up actually giving him the photo last year. So I printed it out and gave it to him. My dentist, are the Red Wings dentist, so I was able to make a print, and they delivered it to him next time they saw him. So, he has a copy of it. I'm sure he's kind of blown away because he remembers that moment quite clearly. But yeah, it was a blink of an eye. When you're in the moment like that and you're photographing something, you don't necessarily get all the pieces of what you just did. You just hope you got it. And that was one of those frames that I was able to capture, and it became a very iconic photo of that series for sure.
Does it upset you at all when you see a photograph that you took without giving you any credit? It's just used either online in social media or through newspapers that was just taken away from you. Does it upset you? Does it make you angry? Or do you have other emotions on people just using the work that you've taken without your permission?
I think, in general, I think any photographer would say that it's frustrating, especially in this digital world. A lot of people think that if it's on the internet, then it's free usage, but, bottom line, after you think about it, you do take that photo and you've gotten paid for it. So, you did get some compensation, but on the other end, you still get frustrated by seeing people not respect, the arts. And same thing, like, any form in writing as well, things, it's like plagiarism in a way. I'm pretty good if you credit me in those regards. I'm pretty fair about it. It just depends. There's some people that, want to exploit images and use them for their own good. And then there's times where, it's not used in their own good. So, all in all, I think, like anybody, we want to get credit for the work we do, and it should be that way. But it's a tough time right now in the digital world, to be putting your work out there, and people do things with it every day. So you just kind of do your best to just kind of see where your work goes, keep track of it, and go from there.
When it comes to professional athletes or coaches, or mainly especially the Detroit Red Wings, who is one of the nicest people who you ever had to take photographs of, who is very approachable, or give us like a secret guy who is one of the nicest people you ever had to work with?
It's hard to say. Like all the athletes that I've been able to work with over the years have been really good in nature. Very down to earth. I've done some work within a company that we were doing some work with Henrik Zetterberg. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, honestly. Every single athlete that I've been able to work with, from the USA Hockey and Red Wings and beyond, is they're very, very approachable, humble guys. So I haven't had any issues over the years. I know people with more experience probably have had different scenarios that they've been with, but in my experience, most of these athletes have been pretty down to earth, and respect the time that we have to do our jobs, and vice versa.
So this fall, if or when, whichever word you'd like to use, USA Hockey comes back in Plymouth, how do you think your job is going to differ from years past due to the coronavirus?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, it's hard to say how things are going to develop. And I think it just depends on how the NHL develops, how they're going to return. That's probably going to dictate a lot of what the minor league systems and college systems do with their programs. Um, I honestly don't have an answer right now for that question. I just trust that, the protocol that they do have is, going to be in place for a reason. And we just have to adapt to the times right now until things get back to normal.
Being the newspaper advisor over at Schoolcraft College, you deal with people beginning in this industry, either with photography, design, writing, interviewing. It's usually people just starting out who
Mhm.
are going to a community college. What are some of the things you've seen that you wish people would work on before they get to you in college?
One of the big things I think is hard for young people is time management. You're pretty structured in your time when you're in high school, and you're told where to go, when to go, and then once you get into college, it's kind of more open range. So a lot of it, I think students need to work on kind of making sure that they're not diving in too deep into their extracurriculars and their work and classroom stuff, because it all does take a toll. Finding the balance is hard, especially at a young age when you're first starting out. You know, uh, Time management, I would say, is one of the big things that the students really kind of need to work on. And that could start at any point in their life, honestly. And I've had a lot of good students that have done excellent in time management. But I mean, I think all of us have issues in time management if you look at it. It just depends on what we're trying. We're trying to do everything, and sometimes that doesn't work.
What advice would you give young photographers right now trying to make it in the business?
Just be patient, really. Do the best you can out there when you're, go to events, just practice, keep practicing, find find the areas that you're interested in, sports, portraits, find a mentor, find someone you can work under and learn more about the business, from the actual shooting of, projects to working, side by side with them on their own projects as like an internship. Just find somebody that you can really kind of work with to grow. First starting out, it's a struggle to, navigate the business. You don't really know how things work. So finding someone that you can, kind of build that relationship with and grow with, and networks into opportunities later on as well. So those are the areas I would say that are, most important.
Okay, so where can people see some of Rena Laverty photography right now?
I have Instagram that I use a lot. My handle is at Rena Laverty, but I also have my website, www.renalaverty.com. I usually, update that as often as I can. And I also have Facebook. So if you have Rena Laverty Photography and Design, that you can find some of my work on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rena, again. I hope you'll be able to shoot more hockey in the fall, even though we don't exactly know what the virus is going to lead for us. But I hope you're back in Plymouth shooting hockey for the USA Developmental League, who have had some really amazing players ever since they've come to Plymouth.
Yes, I've lost track, honestly, every year that I'm, with the program. So many talented groups of young men come through there. It's a quick turnaround because it's only a 2-year program. So you get to see them when they first come in, and then when they leave and go into the draft and into college. And a lot of them are in the NHL right now as well. So like one was, Jack Hughes is there right now, and amazing player. The whole family is amazing. Very down to earth group of young men, and it's you kind of you get connected with them and their families and get to see how they grow in their journey as professional hockey players, and it's good to see them get to the NHL and achieve their lifelong dream, and being able to chronologic capture those moments of theirs in the 2-year program for them is it's a blast, doing that. Those are the best years of their life, honestly, being with those other players that potentially they'll be playing against in the NHL one day.
Well, I hope you're back in the fall taking pictures again. Thank you very much for the interview. To check out this interview and previous interviews, go to the YouTube channel James Paxson. And as always, thank you very much, Rena.
Thank you.